get to wrestle with as well. And so I want to invite you to that this coming Saturday at 8 a.m., all right? You got it in your phones. You got an alarm set, a reminder set. You've got it ready. So let's just plan on being there this Saturday at 8 a.m., all right? You know, every January, we tell ourselves the same story. This year will be different. This is the plan that's going to work. This is the habit that's finally going to stick. And so we buy the book, we download the app, we sign up for the program, and we promise ourselves this year is going to be different. I'm actually going to do it. That this is the year I'm going to change. And it works for a few weeks. And it looks good, at least on the surface. But somewhere between week 2 and week 6, the energy begins to fade. The motivation dips. Life interrupts. And slowly and quietly, we kind of slide back into the same patterns and reactions, the same thoughts we swore we were done with. And what's frustrating is it's not that we don't want to change, it's that we really do. See, deep down, I don't think most of us are looking to be a better version of ourselves. We're looking for relief. We're looking for peace, for freedom, for a sense that there is something real happening inside of us. We want something more. And that's why I think the hype starts to wear thin. See, our culture is full of promises. And they're full of promises about change, and most of them are shallow. They aim at behavior, appearance, productivity, and performance. They offer us speed and convenience, but not depth. They promise results without real formation. And if we're being honest, many of us have quietly begun to wonder if lasting change is even possible. That question is exactly why we're starting this new series today. This new series called New Can't Fix You. And over the next 4 weeks, we're going to slow down and ask, what is Scripture actually teaching us about true change and transformation? And how does that differ from the hypes and the gimmicks that surround us, especially in January? We're going to examine how our culture has replaced what's proven and trustworthy with these newer methods, and we're going to have to ask some really honest questions. Is new really better than the old? Because the truth is, most of what we call new is surface level. New methods, new habits, new motivation, but underneath all of it, the same patterns and the same way of thinking often remain untouched. So this series is not about quick fixes. It's about wisdom. It is about God's wisdom for a real, lasting transformation of our lives. And that leads us back to the question that so many of us are asking. We're just asking it quietly. Is lasting change really possible? Or are we just destined to keep starting over? I don't think most of us doubt change because we're lazy. We don't doubt that change is possible because we're lazy. In fact, we doubt it because we've tried it. We've put in the effort, we've followed the plans, and we've watched as the promises and the energy fade. But that's where the gospel brings a different kind of perspective, a different kind of hope. See, the problem isn't that change is impossible. It's just that the problem is we've been looking in the wrong places. We've been searching in these places where it's not to be found. New can't fix you. But that doesn't mean you have to stay stuck. It means the kind of change you're looking for, you're longing for, doesn't come from hype or willpower. It comes from something deeper, something truer. And that's exactly where the Apostle Paul is going to take us. In his letter to the Romans, Paul isn't writing to a people who don't care about change. He's writing to people who have encountered Jesus and are trying to live differently in a world that keeps trying to shape them and put them back into old patterns. Paul doesn't give them a system. He doesn't give them a shortcut. He gives them a vision of transformation, and it's rooted in God's mercy. And in Romans 12, 1 through 2, Paul shows us where real change begins and how it actually happens and why it's still possible even when we're tired of starting over and over again. So let's read in Romans 12, 1 through 2. And this is what he writes. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Romans 12 is not some random encouragement. It's a turning point. For 11 chapters, Paul has been writing, answering one singular question in this book. 11 chapters on one question. And it's this: what has God done through Jesus Christ? What has God done through Jesus Christ? 11 chapters to explain what God has done through this man named Jesus. And he begins to walk through sin and grace, judgment and mercy, death and resurrection, Israel and the nations, the work of the Spirit, and the faithfulness of God. That's what you're going to find in the first 11 chapters. And then Paul turns a corner and he asks the unavoidable question: if this is what God has done, how should God's people now live? That's why Romans 12 begins with therefore. See, this isn't a move from theology to rules. He's not saying, listen, you're going to now have to apply all these rules to your life. It's a move from theology to response. Paul is not giving the Romans or us a self-improvement plan. He's calling for us to live a life that makes sense in the light of God's mercy. And that matters, especially because who Paul is writing to and the day and age in which they are in. See, these believers in Rome, they lived in the center of power and of culture and influence in the ancient world. And what's interesting is that Rome didn't usually crush the faith of the people they took over. They absorbed it. And they began to use what they had and these other religions that they had acquired to help shape people subtly. It trained them how to think about success. They trained people how to think about honor and pleasure and worth. Faith could exist as long as it didn't disrupt. As long as it stayed quiet and didn't get in the way of everyday life for the community at large. See, Paul knows the kind of pressure that we are experiencing. He knew what the Roman church was experiencing. And so before he tells them, hey, this is what you do to withstand it, he wants to remind them of who you are. And so he urges them to offer their bodies as living sacrifice. And what he's doing is he's reworking this idea of worship. Sacrifices were offered at the temple. And it didn't matter what temple. They were just offered at the temple. It was at a specific place at a specific time. And now Paul is saying, listen, worship happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. And it happens through embodied obedience. If God's Spirit truly lives within you, then your life is sacred. It has become a sacred, holy place. And that leads us directly to verse 2. See, Paul knows that you can offer your body up in service to God while letting your mind be shaped by the world. You can perform with the body and still be conformed by the world. So he goes into the root of the problem. Do not be conformed. Be transformed. And we have to understand, these are not two different kind of growth styles or self-improvement plans. These are two sources of formation. Confirmation happens when we absorb the assumptions of the age in which we live. So we take in everything around us and we conform to some sort of thinking, some sort of living because of the age in which we live. Transformation happens when God acts upon us. One is reshaping us from the outside. The other renews us from the inside. And Paul is clear about something. Be transformed. This is passive. We don't make it happen. God does. But we do have to place ourselves into a position and into a place and to a posture where his renewing work can actually reach us. Transformation is received and then it is practiced. And so Paul is showing us something very important. He's reframing change for us. And it's not something we chase, but it's something God does. It's not behavior management. It's a deep renewal that begins in our mind. And so he begins to give us this language for what transformation is and what it looks like, but more importantly, from where it comes. But knowing how change works and living under the weight of wanting it are two very different things. You can know where the transformation comes from and live with that weight, but not do anything with it. So this isn't just some theological conversation. It is a personal revelation. For most of us, especially if you've been in church any kind of time of your life, you've probably heard this passage. And it's not there to just inform us, because often it touches this place, I think, of frustration. It reaches into this place of fatigue, a place where we've tried and we've hoped and we failed and we've started over and we've done this more times than we care to admit. So before we talk about what we need to do, we need to talk about what this actually feels like. Because how we feel about change often reveals what we believe about change. And whether we believe that transformation and change of our life is even possible. I think a lot of us believe in it in theory. We don't believe in it in practice because we can't feel it. And so this is where Paul's words start to meet us at the heart level. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us aren't failing because we lack discipline. We're failing because we're trying to build a new way of living on old ways of thinking. Our lives move in the direction of our thoughts. Our patterns are shaped by what we dwell on. Our behavior flows from what we believe to be true. Church, I cannot disciple you in 35 minutes every week. Do you know why? Because your news source, your social media, your whatever is discipling you 12 to 14 hours a day. Your choice is what you listen to, what you surround yourself with, what you feed your mind, what you feed your soul is shaping you far more than a single message on a Sunday from this book ever can. Because I have 35 minutes to try and help you rethink, shift, and change what it is in your life. Our patterns are shaped by what we dwell on. Our direction and our life moves in the direction of our thoughts. That's why Romans 12 is so important, and Paul uses it to press so deeply. He's not talking to outsiders. He's talking to believers. People who love Jesus. People who really want to follow him. And he's saying something that we don't always want to hear. You don't drift towards transformation. You are going to drift towards conformity. Discipleship is happening all around you all the time. Every scroll, every headline, every conversation, every value you quietly absorb. You are being discipled because we have been created to be discipled. And here's the line that captures the heart of all of it. And you may have seen it this week on social media. The question isn't whether you'll be shaped. You will. The question is by what? What is shaping you? What is it that is shaping how you think? How you view the world? Which means none of us are neutral. Even if we think we're standing still, something is still shaping us because we're being pressed in by it. When we're not paying attention, something else is gladly going to step in because formation never pauses. So look at the voices you trust, the stories you choose to believe, the patterns that we repeat. They're all forming us into someone. And the real issue isn't whether we'll be shaped, it's whether we'll be shaped on purpose or by default. And that's why Paul's words matter so much. Because long before he gives us instruction on what to do, he wants to help us see clearly what is already happening. And so I want to walk through these verses again. And listen what he says. Don't be shaped by the world. Paul's warning is very clear. Do not be conformed to this world. Here's the thing. Conformity doesn't feel rebellious. It feels normal. It feels comfortable. It's familiar. See, the world doesn't need us to reject God. It just needs you to stop paying attention. See, it values quietly becoming our default method. Its priorities reshape our expectations. Its stories tell us what kind of life is worth chasing. And Paul isn't saying withdraw from the world. He's saying resist without being molded by it. You can live in this world without letting it decide how you think, how you live, who you're becoming. But that kind of resistance doesn't happen naturally. Drift always moves us towards conformity, not transformation. So don't be shaped by the world. Instead, be changed by God. So Paul gives us this hope. Be transformed. He doesn't say fix yourself. He doesn't say try harder. He says let go and let God do the changing. That matters because there are so many of us that are exhausted from trying to be better Christians or better people through effort alone. And Paul reminds us that transformation is not self-generated. It is God-initiated. We don't create it. We receive it. But that doesn't mean passivity. It means surrender. We stop pretending we are the source of our own renewal, and we place ourselves honestly in God's hands. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about living out who you already are and who you can be in Christ. So be changed by God. But it starts in the mind. Paul tells us exactly where the work begins. By renewing your mind. In the first century, the mind wasn't just seen as intellect. It was your perception. It was your imagination. It was your judgment and direction. And renewal meant learning to see the world differently. I think this is why fear, temptation, and discouragement often show up first as thoughts before they become a lifestyle. The more we can be fearful, the more we can be tempted, the more we can be discouraged, the more those thoughts shape our direction. And that's why Scripture matters so deeply. This is not just information, it is formation. And as truth replaces lies, desires begin to be reordered. And over time, behavior follows. So it starts right here in the mind. But here's what's great is clarity follows renewal. Paul doesn't end with anything but a promise of hope. Then you will be able to discern God's will. We so often want clarity before surrender. But Paul flips the order. As our minds are renewed, our instincts begin to change. God's will becomes recognizable. And God's will, hear me on this, it is good, it is pleasing, and it is perfect. It is whole. It leads to life. Where the world wants to offer us shortcuts that promise freedom but delivers exhaustion, God offers this slower path that leads us to life. And if we stop here, it becomes a message that only lives in our heads and we feel in our hearts. But Paul did not intend for it to stay there, for the Romans nor for us. Because while it's true that Christ has done everything that we could never do, it doesn't mean transformation happens without our participation. Grace does not eliminate practice. It simply reshapes it. Paul has been clear. We do not transform ourselves. God does the work. Renewal is received, not achieved. But just as Paul is clear that we are called to place our lives where God can do the renewing work, we have to make sure that we follow through in obedience of what he calls us to do. In other words, there are ways in which we can cooperate with God and what he is already doing. And this isn't done so we can earn change. It's not to prove anything. It's simply to make space for transformation to take root. And so the question becomes this: if God is the one who renews us, what does it look like to live in a way that welcomes renewal? Well, this is where it has to move from belief to practice, from conviction to daily living, from the heart to our hands. And so let's talk about what this looks like. This is where it becomes practical. You may have been wondering what was in my bag. Well, let me show you. I love snickerdoodle cookies. In fact, snickerdoodles is probably one of my favorite cookies of all time. It's a close second to my favorite, which is oatmeal chocolate chip. But I love snickerdoodles. I love the cinnamon. I love the sugar. I love the whole thing. And they taste good. Thank you. It's one of my favorites. And I'll be honest, there are times where I want a snickerdoodle cookie, but I have no desire to start making them. So guess what happens the next time I'm at Hannaford's? Throw a bag in my cart. See, store-bought solutions are designed for speed and simplicity. They give us quick results. They satisfy the longing temporarily. They're easy to grab and easy to replace. And they taste good. But not quite great. It's missing something. It's not quite good. Our culture is really good about giving us store-bought solutions for our soul. Quick fixes. Prepackaged answers change without formation. But homemade cookies, they take time. It takes intention. It takes attention to detail. You know what's going into this cookie. You know how good it is and how the measuring worked out and how much sugar you put in, how much cinnamon you rolled around it. You know what it tastes like, or at least you remember. And there's a fuller taste to it because it's meant to sustain us. Man, I really wrapped this good. And when you take a bite of a homemade cookie, oh, and it's soft. When it comes right out of the oven, it's warm. Guess what? There's a fuller taste in this cookie than there is in this one. This one is far more satisfying. This works in a pinch. But I'd rather have this one every day of the week. So thanks to my mom for making this.
Bring it up for everyone.
I did not, sorry. But this is what Romans 12 is inviting us into. To an experience of faith that looks more like this and less like this. Because renewing the mind doesn't happen in one moment. It's not like you go into the store and say, I want to renew my mind today, and so I'm going to grab the package of renewal, and I'm going to throw it in, I'm going to open it up. It's going to work for a bit. It doesn't work like that. It happens through repeated exposure to the truth, daily, quietly, faithfully. For some of you, this may be the first time you ever thought about change this way. You may not even think of yourself as a religious person. You might be here or watching online because someone invited you, or because you're searching for something that feels solid, something that actually holds on when life gets heavy. And if that's you, I want you to know there's no pressure in this moment. See, following Jesus doesn't have to have everything figured out. It simply starts with noticing what you've been trusting, what you've been relying on to make you whole, and that it hasn't really delivered the answers you thought it would. That's not failure. That's awareness. And awareness is often the first step to something better. For some of us, the most important practice we can add this week and this month is not a new habit. It will be simply stopping to pay attention. Paying attention to the patterns that we keep repeating, to the thoughts that keep looping in our head, the places that we continue to turn for, looking for fulfillment or relief or peace. Because when we do that, this is not so that we can judge ourselves. This is not about trying to fix ourselves. This is just about noticing. Because when we notice what's shaping us, we start to notice that there's something else too. We start to notice that we were never meant to carry the weight we're carrying. That we weren't responsible for trying to change our life and ourselves on our own. And this is where the invitation of Jesus becomes so different from everything else we have tried. See, Jesus doesn't give us a system, he gives us a relationship. He offers himself. He doesn't demand immediate perfection, he just simply asks for a step. He doesn't want the whole journey right up front. He wants us to walk one step at a time. And so if all you do this week is slow down just enough to begin to ask honest questions that really matter, if all you can do is admit that you're tired of starting over, that really matters. If all you can do is wonder whether or not there might be another way to live, that matters too. These are not signs of weakness. these are signs that there is something deeper stirring within your soul. And often that stirring is where transformation begins. So here's your next step. Before you add something new, ask what needs to be renewed. What needs to be renewed within me? Pay attention to what shapes your thinking. Choose scripture over the scroll. Choose truth over just the constant noise. Choose formation over a quick fix. Offer God your mind again. Not once, but daily. And you may have to stop multiple times in your day and say, God, I give you my mind again. I can see it's being shaped. My reaction was not of you. I'm being shaped. I'm being formed. And so do it over and over and over. Look where you can be renewed. You may have walked in today carrying the weight of wanting things to be different patterns or different reactions, maybe different thoughts that don't pull you back into the same places. And what Romans 12 gives us is not a new plan to try harder, but a better place to stand. It reminds us that lasting change doesn't begin with effort. It begins with mercy. And mercy comes from surrender. By offering our lives back to God and allowing him to renew us from the inside out. That means you don't have to fix yourself before God starts to do the work. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to chase the next solution. You just have to pause and surrender. New can't fix you. But that shouldn't leave you hopeless. It actually leaves you invited. Invited to stop striving and start trusting. To lean on God and not your own power. You're invited to trade quick fixes for deep formation that changes you. That makes life a little easier. That you see a little clearer. And finally, you're invited to let God do what only he can do. You're invited to do this. For some of you, this might be landing closer to home than you expected. You didn't come in today expecting a sermon on change. Maybe you know something feels unfinished, incomplete, like you've been chasing the next thing that promises to make life feel whole and only to end up more tired than you were before. If that is you, I want you to hear this clearly. Jesus isn't standing at a distance waiting for you to get it all together. He's not even asking you to clean yourself up or figure it all out. He's already done all the work for you. He's done all the work you could never accomplish for yourself. It is through his life, his death, and his resurrection that he's made a way for us to experience real life. Not a quick fix, not a temporary boost, but a new beginning. And what he offers us today isn't pressure, it's an invitation to simply take the first step. Not the whole journey, just a step. Following Jesus doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. It just means you trust him enough to take one step and then the next and then the next. And over time, something begins to change in you. And what happens within you begins to change the way things go around you. Not because they have changed, but because you have changed your perception on how to see it. You're no longer formed by the outside voices. You're being transformed by the renewing of your mind. If something is stirring inside you today and you're tired of feeling something new, and maybe this feels like another attempt, let the grace of God gently draw you toward life. You don't have to rush it. You don't have to force it. You simply have to be willing. And here's where we're going to go next. Because if transformation, today's been about where transformation begins, and it's in our mind. Next week, we're going to talk about where it comes from. Paul doesn't just tell us that our minds are renewed. He points to the source of the renewal. And it's not willpower, not discipline, not motivation. It is the Lord himself. So next week, we're going to look at what it means to stop trying to manufacture change, and instead we're going to learn to receive it. To trust that the God who began a good work in us is faithful to carry it through to completion. This is the hope that we step into this week. And I would love to invite you back next week to simply take one more step. Father, I know you want to transform us. I know you are worried or concerned about who we're becoming and less about what we're doing. And so, Father, as we stop and we listen and we allow you to renew our minds, Lord, help us to see that it's not because we've tried harder, but it's because we've surrendered deeper. And the renewal and the change and the transformation we long for, Lord, it comes from the inside. Because it's what you are doing in us that changes how we see the world around us. And so, Father, as we end this time, let this song, let it be our response, our prayer. Lord, let it be our answer as we walk out of this place, that we are letting you change us from the inside out instead of letting the world change us from the outside in. And we give you